Hi, I'm Clate Mask, and on the Conquer the Chaos podcast, I talk with inspiring business owners about what it takes to build a great business and a great life. That means more money, more time, more control, more impact, more freedom. So keep listening to hear the tough lessons they learned so you don't have to repeat them. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. I am your host, Clate Mask, and I have with me a good and longtime friend who is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to one of the most critical aspects of business, and that's sales. Welcome, Eric Lofholm. So great to have you here with me.
Hey, Clay, it is great to be here. And yeah, you and I go back probably about 20 years.
Yes.
And, we've done a lot through the years, and it's great to be here.
And by the way, you still look the same you did 20 years ago. I don't know how it's possible. So let me just give everybody a little bit, and then I'll give you a chance to say more about what you do. And so Eric is a specialist when it comes to sales. He understands the art and psychology of sales. He understands the team building aspects of sales. He understands the support that's needed in order to make sales a thriving function in your business. And he understands how important it is that entrepreneurs apply enough energy and focus on sales. A lot of times what happens is we get some sales going and then we take our eyes off that ball and we don't keep sales as a really strong function in the business. So I've had the privilege of working with Eric in many different ways. Eric's been a customer using our software for many years, probably close to 2 decades at this point, early customer. And I've seen him teach and train many different people, many different entrepreneurs in different stages that they're in. So Eric, why don't you say a little more about what you do, and then we'll talk about the stages of small business growth and what needs to happen in sales in order to move from stage to stage.
Yeah, sounds great. I've been selling for over 30 years. I started my own training company in 1999, so I'm in my 27th year. I am passionate about helping people make more sales, and there is a lot of psychology to it, and there's a lot of business owners that want to do anything but sell. So
right.
I love helping them, and I also love helping people that are experienced salespeople that want to go to their next level. And so I live in that space all day, every day, coaching, speaking to teams, and so that's what I'm all about, and anything to do with increasing sales.
Eric, I think one of the reasons why you and I connected all those years ago is because I share the same passion for you about the nobility of sales. And that is not a phrase that people say very often. They don't think that sales is noble, but sales is probably the single greatest job producer in the economy. Yeah. Nothing happens. People don't get hired if we don't have sales. And so you can easily say, well, you got to have product. Well, you can have product. And if you don't have sales, it's not happening. Some of the greatest products in the world didn't ever get the company to where it needed to be because there wasn't the sales engine behind it. So to me, and by the way, I wasn't always this way. Although I kind of had a penchant for sales when I was a kid, I went through school and college, and 8 years of college sort of beat the salesmanship out of me. Yep. and sort of got me conditioned to think that, it wasn't, frankly, I didn't take any sales classes in business school. I didn't take any sales classes in college. It was like this side thing that you sort of, frankly, the academic people looked down on.
Yeah.
And so I learned when I got into entrepreneurship what a travesty that was. And I've told this story before, but I'll say it. And I think this is why you and I are connected so well. In the early days of our software company, we were struggling like crazy. And we had decided it was my job to sell. And the other co-founders were building the product. So I'm selling, and I'm trying to sell, and I'm not closing sales. And I'm starting to feel really stressed because they're building the product and they're counting on me to make sales so that we can feed our families. And we were, at the time there were 4 of us, and we were taking home literally like $1,000, $2,000 a month each, just because we weren't making sales. And, with each week that passed, the other co-founders are looking at me like, hey, so you going to start making some sales here, buddy? And I was feeling the stress. And I went over to my dad one day and just laid out like the emotions just came pouring out because it wasn't working, and it was on me. It was my job to do the selling.
Yeah.
And he listened to me, and I will never forget, after I literally was crying, it just kind of like all this energy came out of, I had the responsibility of these team members and my family, and we weren't selling, and it was all me. And, feeling the weight of the entrepreneur. Some people out there know what I'm talking about. And he said to me after I kind of laid it all out, he looks me straight in the eyes and he's like, "Are you exercising?" And I was like, "How's that going to solve the problem?" Did you not hear anything I said, Dad? And long story short, he said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning at 5:00?" And by the way, that was the second amazing life lesson he taught me, is get up early and exercise. And from that point, he got me a gym membership, and we went to the gym. And each day for about a week or so, he would talk to me about the business and just let me just unpack the frustrations I was feeling. And after a few days, he said, "So tell me how you're selling." And my dad had a little bit of background in sales. He's a teacher, an educator, but in the first part of his career, he was in sales. And so he'd done a lot of the sales training out there. And I told him what I was doing. And at the time, we were selling custom software. And it was very difficult. It was web-based custom software when people were using dial-up internet. Not a real great model.
Yeah.
So I explained to him, I had all these leads, but they just weren't buying. They just weren't, I couldn't get them over the finish line. So he said, "Okay, well, let's do a little role play here." And I kind of said, "Okay." And I kind of uncomfortably did a role play with my dad as we're standing outside the gym one morning at 6 a.m. after working out. And he says, I get done saying, kind of my spiel. And he says, "Okay, you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Sell." He's like, "You're not." And I said, "Dad, I am selling. That was my selling." He's like, "You're not selling. You're kind of telling people what they could do. You got to sell them. You got to persuade them of why they should do this. Do you believe in your product? Yes. Do you believe in your team members? Yes. Do you believe you're going to deliver value? Yes. Then show it. Show conviction. Show that you actually believe this." And I was like totally put in my place and realized I wasn't bringing conviction. I wasn't bringing energy. I wasn't bringing belief. I was sheepish, and I was apologizing almost that I was asking for their money. And my dad sniffed right through it, put it into my mind that I needed to make changes. And the next week we started selling. Nice. And it was as simple as getting my mind right. Now, I imagine for people out there who are in the very early stages and they're in the place that I was, they need a little bit of a psychology adjustment. They need a little bit of a mindset shift. You've seen this across so many people. What was it that I was dealing with? What is it that so many others deal with that prevent an entrepreneur from getting to the first 100,000?
Yeah, well, what you're talking about is the position that the entrepreneur is coming from. And if they're coming from, there's a stigma to sales in our culture.
Yeah.
You ask somebody, "Well, what's sales to you?" "Well, it's arm twisting. It's high pressure. It's manipulation. I'm resistant to it. I don't like it. I'd rather be doing anything but sell." And
yeah.
That's a position to come from. And so that creates a certain way. And what I teach is selling equals service. Sell from honesty, integrity, and compassion. Selling is about leading. Selling is about moving people to action. Well, that's a position to come from. And they're totally different. So I'm the same person. I come from here. I can come from here. And this is selling equals service. And this is, I'm resisting sales. And it creates differently. So to me, the starting point is going, "Oh, I need to embrace sales. I need to come from a different place." From that different place, it's going to cause them to go, "Oh, well, what does my sales process need to be? What's my strategy need to be?"
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be looking at that because they're like, "I don't even want to sell."
Yeah. And we'll get to the sales process and strategy in just a second. Let's double click down on this where the place you're coming from. You're either coming from arm twisting or you're coming from service. And let's push a little harder on that, because what I've seen and what I know you teach is that when we're coming from the place of service and compassion and leading people to action that's going to benefit them, and we recognize that they're not going to be in a better position if they don't take action. They only improve their lives or their business or whatever it is that we're selling if they take action. Once we can make that belief firm in our mind, then we can come from that place. But there's still a thing that we have to do that is not just trying to persuade. You know, when my dad was like, look, you're not persuading, that was the first part of it, which we covered here. But then there's the part of like helping them see value, laying out for them how their life gets better because of what we have, and then actually stepping the prospect through the entire process of making a decision and buying. So can you talk about that, the deeper part of once you get past the psychology, but you're still a solopreneur, you're still trying to make those early sales, what is it that you've got to frame up for them to lead them to action to improve their lives by buying from you?
Well, what I teach is, I call it Sales Mountain, which is the outline of an effective sales presentation. So Sales Mountain is going in with a plan, and it has to do with the sequencing of the presentation. So what a lot of people do, instead of going in with a plan, is they wing it.
Yes.
Okay. I was talking to a guy right before I got on with you today, and he's leading a sales meeting, and he goes, yeah, I lead my sales meeting with no plan. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to be an effective meeting. You're
right.
wasting people's time. Go in with a plan. So in a sales presentation, in most cases, we're delivering a repetitive presentation. So back in the day, when you're selling software, the benefits of the software are the same. You know, the bells and whistles are the same. So put together a great, effective, repetitive presentation. It starts with the outline. And then within the outline, it's a clear outcome of what's the outcome of the presentation. How am I going to ask for the order? What's the language that I'm going to use? What's the result? Do I want a contract signed? Do I want to get a credit card? Do I want to book the next appointment? You know, what's the outcome of the appointment? And so when people are coming from selling as arm twisting, I'm resistant to it, they're probably not going through that process.
Right.
I'm going to serve this person. I'm going to go into the plan. Selling is a very intentional style of communication. And in often cases, it's repetitive, where we're delivering a very similar presentation. And so those two pieces, embracing sales by selling equal service and going in with the plan, can make a huge difference.
Love that. The Sales Mountain, that's basically a step-by-step process that shows how the customer's life is going to get better by taking action and buying from you today. And that, by the way, doesn't have to feel super salesy. I'll tell you, I had an experience when I was early in my career. I had been kind of getting into sales and realizing kind of what I needed to do. And I had this very interesting experience where a couple weeks apart, I went to a chiropractor and a dentist. And the chiropractor had I went to go visit the chiropractor because I hurt my back. And the chiropractor helped my back and then laid out for me a very specific set of things that they recommended I do, which included getting their services over a period of time, and said, you know, and if you'd like to do that with us, your back will improve in these ways, and it costs this much, and you can make this payment today to get started. And it was very simple. It was very logical. I walked out of there and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that I just got sold. Because I, as a customer, sometimes think of arm twisting and all the things we talked about. My come from as a customer was, I'm coming from arm twisting, when they were just serving me. And they started by fixing my back, and then they, laid out a regimen that was literally in their practice. What I came to find out later is that chiropractors, dentists, a lot of these service providers, they call it a case presentation. That's called your Sales Mountain, right? Your Sales Mountain is the case presentation. It presents the case, and the patient or the client can accept that. Contrast that with the dentist, where I got done and it was like, do you want to book an appointment in 6 months? Just contact us. It was like, I walked out of the office. There was no commitment to the next step. I care about my, having my teeth clean. I would like to just make sure that happens, but it was just, I walked out. Now, I've seen since then chiropractors who don't do a good case presentation and chiropractors who do. And I've seen dentists who do a really great case presentation and dentists who don't. But the reason I bring up that example is my chiropractor and my dentist were not salespeople. And so right now there's a bunch of entrepreneurs listening, and they're like, they don't identify as a salesperson. They identify as an entrepreneur or as a practitioner of whatever their craft is. And that's great. Just make a case presentation. It's called a Sales Mountain, and you've just laid out how to do that. So anything you wanted to say about that just maybe helping people to get past the psychology and understand the steps that you take should show value and lead people to action?
Yeah, if we remove the word sales and we just think about influence, persuasion, right?
Yep.
A doctor's going to influence us to do things to take better care of our health. The
Right.
dentist with our teeth, the teacher to do the homework, whatever. And so we're all influencing. And so then the question is, do I want to get really good at that? Because if I want to get really good at that, then I got to learn this thing called Sales Mountain, or different trainers call it different things.
Right.
Take them through a process. This is true in dating. It's true in hiring. It's true in parenting. Parenting's a little bit different, but it's still influence. And so there's a science to this that anybody can learn. And there's a lot of different ways that it can be applied in order to make our lives better. And so to me, it's very worthwhile learning.
Yes. Yep. I love it. It is to me too. That's why we connected so well a long time ago. We'll talk about the next stage in just a second, but I remembered something that I wanted to share. When I started to really embrace the nobility of sales early on, I came across a quote from the great Zig Ziglar that you probably are familiar with. It says, "Timid salespeople have skinny children."
Yep.
And I loved it so much because what's more noble than providing for your kids? And so I got it made up in vinyl, and we put it up on our walls in our office in the early days so that so everybody understood that sales is creating jobs and feeding families. That's really a great thing. And yes, we want to get better and better at our craft and do it in a way that's service oriented and that improves people's lives. But I'm glad we spent the first few minutes here talking about that, because I think we got to get that mindset and psychology right in order to go to the next stages. And, another great thing I remember realizing early on as we started to make sales and it was really starting to grow. I loved the Dave Ramsey quote of, customers show you give you certificates of appreciation with presidents' faces on them, and they appreciate what you're doing to improve their lives. So I love that as well. Okay, so now let's go to the next stage. We talk about the 1s and 3s of revenue. Getting to 100,000, you got to get the psychology part right, and you got to apply time to it. A lot of times entrepreneurs are so distracted doing lots of different things, or they're doing the day job and they don't have enough time to sell. And so if you got enough time and you apply the psychology, you can get to 100,000. Now, what needs to happen to get to 300,000? Because pretty soon you start to realize that you can't do it all yourself. And I know that you've got a view of what needs to happen in order for that business owner that's now starting to learn how to sell to be able to take sales up to 300,000 a year.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I teach exactly what I did myself when I started my sales training company, and I started out of a spare bedroom in my condo. And so I'm everything, I'm for service. I'm running the credit cards. I'm the web developer.
The life of the solopreneur. Yes.
So then it's like, all right, now I got some revenue coming in. What if I hire an assistant to offload, the customer service and data entry? And I think it was like $1,000 a month. And it was scary, Clate, to make that decision, right?
Yeah.
Made the decision. Okay, now I've got that doing 20 hours a week. Now I'm freed up to sell more. And then I was like, right, how can I accelerate this more? I need some sales support. I need somebody to book appointments for me. I need somebody to do some follow-up work. I'm still the salesperson.
Yep.
That's what I did as a next step. I hired some admin support and I hired some sales support. And then that took me to my next level.
I love that. It's funny because in the stages of software growth where I've kind of applied the general small business growth stages specifically to software, I call out the key thing that needs to happen in operations in the business is freeing up the owner to be able to sell more. And that's what you've just described. You get it, $1,000, which was scary, but you're taking you're buying back some of your time by hiring that person. Just make sure you use that time to sell more. A lot of times people will go, they're good at selling. They buy back some of their time because they don't like doing this certain thing, but they don't increase the amount of time they're selling. And you want to get better and better at selling. So getting to 300,000 in a nutshell, it's some admin support, improving your sales capabilities, and the the amount of time and effort that you're putting into sales so you can scale it up to 300,000. Okay, great. So now we're at 300,000. We want to grow the business to $1 million. Now it starts to get, this next stage to go from 300,000 to $1 million. You're not going to do that just the business owner. So I think one of the scariest investments that we ever make, probably the scariest investment, is our first employee. But the next scariest investment we make in business is hiring a salesperson, because it can go so wrong. It's really hard to get it right. So I know that you and I have talked, and you believe that hiring a salesperson, you're not going to get to $1 million unless you figure out how to hire a salesperson. So let's take a little time here, because we got a lot of people that are listening that are in that 300,000 to $1 million. They want to get to that 7-figure business, and they know that they need a salesperson, not to stop selling themselves, but to augment what they do, to put a little bit more of their time in some other areas of the business. It starts to become very, very necessary. So take us through that. How do you hire a salesperson effectively?
Yeah, well, it's a whole different skill set. Right? You're out there now, you're selling, you're doing great. Now you got to hire the salesperson. And so you're thinking about it through the lens of this person. What's a salesperson looking for in an opportunity? They're looking for a good comp plan. They're looking for stability. They're looking for, good leads, a good product to sell. They're looking for culture, right?
Yep.
So now we got to develop a whole new muscle, right?
Yes.
So that's, you and I both know this, because I've been in business I'm in my 27th year. And so you learn a lot, as you're going through this. Hiring one salesperson and hiring a sales team, and then you got a sales manager. And so there's a lot to learn there, but it's really thinking about the opportunity through the lens of your salesperson that you're going to be hiring.
I love that. Yes.
Because it's
why would they come do this, right? If you want to attract the right person, why would they come do it?
Yeah, like, what's your training that you're going to provide them? What CRM are you going to provide them? Because you're not, what you're thinking of is probably, oh, if I have a salesperson, there's more revenue coming in and I get to grow. That's true. But what about that person?
Right.
For example, if you're like, oh, it'd be great, I'll just hire them on straight commission, and that reduces my risk. Well, here's the problem with that. It's not that you can't do that, but you hire somebody on straight commission, on day one, Clate, they're already looking for another job, because what if it doesn't work out?
Right.
I don't want my new hire literally on day one already in the mindset of I'm looking for something else. And so I will often provide guaranteed compensation, whether it's a draw or whether it's a 90-day certain amount I give them, retainer amount, hourly, whatever, because I don't want them in that mindset. So we have to really think about, like, how am I going to support this human being?
Yeah.
And we're probably not used to encouraging another person. Like, when they don't perform, how do you communicate with them? Are you like frustrated? You communicate your frustration, or are you supportive and nurturing? And do you have reasonable expectations? And have you documented what's their job description? What are you expecting? How are you going to communicate with them? Because now you've got this person that's going to be reporting to you, and they're going to need support. So these are all things that, you're not, unless you've had salespeople before, you're not going to know that.
Well, and on top of all of that, you have learned how to sell, but you haven't learned how to teach other people to sell. And so it's all up in your head frequently. You haven't usually taken the time to get it out onto paper and say, okay, here's what happened. A lead comes in. We do A, B, and C, and then it moves to the next stage in the process, and we do D, E, and F, and then it moves to the next stage. And we do, we don't tend to think that way. We just get leads and respond and react, and we're closing deals, right? That's what we do when we're founders that are selling. And so first you got to find a person who's got the right skill set. And by the way, that right person is not someone who's been in a really large organization as a salesperson. It's someone who's been in a relatively small organization similar to yours. One of the great things about laying out the stages of business is that you want to hire people who have proven recently that they're really good in the stage you're in and the next stage you're following. So if you're at 300,000 to $1 million, you want to hire salespeople who have been really good at 300,000 to $1 million and 1 to 3 million. You don't want to go hire someone that's got sparkling credentials from a Fortune 500 company. They're not going to work well in your business, and you're not going to be a good leader for them. So hire for the current stage and one stage ahead, someone who's got a proven track record of selling effectively, something similar to what you sell, and at the similar price points. If you're selling something that's $1,000 on average, you need someone who has sold stuff at that level, because if they're used to selling something at $100, their psychology is not right for this. If they're used to selling something that's $100,000, their psychology is not right for your product. So you got to get someone that's got the skill set to sell in the stage that you're in something similar and price similar to what you do. And then you've got a chance at being successful, a chance. So now you get this person in, and like you said, Eric, now you're a boss and you're leading this person. You got to get the process out of your head of what I do when I sell. And most specifically, once I get that customer on the phone, or on, online, or however it is you're communicating, text, you name it, what is, as Eric called it, the sales mountain? What's the case presentation? What's the actual process you take an interested prospect through to get them to take action and buy? If you can't articulate that very clearly to your new salesperson, we're all in trouble. It's not going to go well. So Eric's sales mountain, or the case presentation, however you want to describe it, there's a process from an interested prospect through to the close. And that's not the only part, but that's the most crucial part. You got to understand from lead all the way through the process, but a warm lead, kind of nurturing and educating, moving them along. But the crucial part is when you've got a good lead, because if you're not the one selling and you know how to do this, now you're handing it over to somebody. That's really valuable. That's a really valuable asset you're handing over. It's not only the dollars that you spent to generate that lead, but it's a potential client. It's your company's reputation. It's all these things. So any thoughts, Eric, about what people can do to get more regimented in the checklist or the process that they create, so that when they find someone they think is going to be a good fit along the factors that I mentioned, the stage, the size, the similar industry, all those kinds of things, they've got that person in the seat, and now they're counting on this person taking leads and turning them into new customers. Any specific thoughts for our listeners about that?
I think it has to do with where we put our learning time. So right now, I have come to the realization I've got to really get better at AI and understanding not only how to use it in my business, but how to help my clients with it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm dedicating about 3 hours a week right now, just sitting in on Zoom calls or working with consultants, realizing I need that muscle. So if we relate that to hiring your first salesperson, if you do not have the skill set because you haven't done it before,
right?
What I'm doing with AI right now, you want to do that with, you're talking about like a checklist, for example. You want to get into Chat GPT and go, hey, I'm hiring my first salesperson. What checklist do I need?
Right.
You want to start watching YouTube videos around how to be an effective, I'm an entrepreneur, how do I be an effective leader to a salesperson? Because you've got to, there's going to be a learning curve there. And so just to think, I'm going to hire a salesperson, it's all going to work out. No, that's not how it's going to work. You're going to learn a lot, as you and I both have, with all the hiring we've done through the years. You learn a lot as you go. And so if you can, there's the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. So start becoming aware of what you don't know that you don't know. Find a consultant like myself that can help cut down the learning curve. I was just talking to a new sales leader. He's never led before, and he's in a learning curve right now. And I'm like, hey, I can help you cut down the learning curve because.
Right.
So that would be the thing. And now with AI and Chat GPT, I mean, wow, you could have it like create a sales playbook. You could do a Zoom recording and transcribe it of your sales process and upload it in Chat GPT. Turn this into a training manual. And create the documentation that you previously didn't have to really give your salesperson an opportunity to win.
Yeah. So I appreciate the point about capturing what you have done in a Zoom call. You can capture what you've the way that you've communicated in emails. You can capture Zoom calls, and you can use AI to actually create a first draft of your process and even your scripts that you're going to provide. Now, once you have a draft, then you have to actually look at it and say, okay, is this exactly how I do it? Is this the way I work through the process with a lead or a prospect? But you're going to want to provide that to the new sales rep, because if you don't have that, the last thing you want to do is say, here's leads. You're the salesperson. Your job's to go close them. That is not going to go well. It's going to be a very expensive learning process for the salesperson, and there's a high likelihood that person will flame out. So the point that I wanted to make sure that we draw out for you, and Eric shared this, it's capturing what's in your brain, right? You got to take what's in your brain, and you can do that through recordings of calls. You can do that through emails that you've sent to prospects, and you can use AI to summarize that and create a first draft. Now, that's not your final draft that you're going to provide to your sales rep, but it will be a great starting point for you. Then you can kind of fill in the gaps and go, okay, here's what we do in our process, and here's what we say, and here's a first version of the script. Now, when you apply that version to the sales rep, the reason why it takes time to lead that sales rep is you're going to do a lot of back and forth on the refinement of that. And you're going to need to schedule time with the sales rep to go, okay, what'd you learn? How'd that go? And then you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. When I'm with a prospect, there's this part of the call that is really crucial for them to understand why they should have urgency in moving. It's those kinds of things that business owners, they start to do it by second nature, and they don't realize that it's a key part of the buying process that we've got to communicate in our selling process. So the bottom line there is you create a process for one salesperson. Now, what I like to say is when you've got an owner that can sell and a sales rep that can sell, you've got a good shot at getting to $1 million, because two people that are producing well, sometimes you might need to get another person or two depending on your price points. But generally speaking, to get to $1 million, you don't have to have a big, huge sales team, obviously. One or two people, maybe three that are selling, that'll get the job done. But Eric, once you get to $1 million, now to get to 3 million, go to the next stage, now you've actually got to build a sales team. And that's a whole new thing. It's not just teaching one person how to sell. Now we've got a sales team. We start to have different tools, different things we need. So share with us a little bit about your experience in some of the key steps to take in order to successfully build a sales team of 5, 6, 8 people that are selling.
Well, now we're dealing with a whole different level of lead generation support. Okay.
Yeah.
It depends on what you do. I mean, some industries like real estate, you go work for a broker. The broker's generally not giving you leads. In some cases they are, but the broker could add in 100 real estate agents because they're responsible for their own lead gen. But if you're in a business and let's say you got plenty of leads for you and your salesperson, and you're like, okay, cool, we're going to scale this. We're going to go to 5 salespeople. Well, you got to think about the lead gen, and now you also need to think about the sales leader. Who's going to actually lead them? Are you going to hire a sales manager? What's the compensation for that person? Making sure that person is on board with the culture, because it's probably not going to be this. You're not going to hire a salesperson. They're successful, and now they're going to become the sales manager. I mean, it's possible, but it's unlikely. I mean, a lot of people have tried that. It's not a recipe for success. You take a successful salesperson. Now I'm going to make you a sales manager. We want to, bring on somebody that has sales management experience, that knows how to lead a team, and then are they going to fit in with your culture, right?
Right.
Can you work with them? Do they like it? Do you like them? What's the compensation? What's the lead flow?
Hey, Eric, let me ask you this. I've seen this over and over. You have too. The mistake that business leaders will make, you just called it out, where they'll take a good salesperson and turn that person into the sales leader. It almost always does not work out. Why doesn't that work out? Like help the audience understand why they should not try to do that, because it's irresistible. They've got this known quantity in Joe that sells effectively, and Joe a lot of times is pushing to be the leader.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it work out? And what would you say to help people avoid that crucial mistake?
Well, let's just look at 2 basketball examples. Magic Johnson arguably, undeniably one of the 10 greatest players to ever play basketball.
Yep.
He was the coach of the Lakers, and most people don't know that because he didn't last.
It was disastrous.
And then you got Phil Jackson or Steve Kerr. Kerr,
or Michael Jordan, frankly.
Michael Jordan flopped as part of his problem is he's not good at relationships. Right. When you're leading people, it's all about relationship. It's about inspiring people. And he was so great individually, like Magic, not an effective, NBA executive, massively failed. Phil Jackson.
Let's go to your Phil Jackson and Magic Johnson, because those are such great examples.
Phil Jackson's a bench player for the Knicks, and then wins, I think it was 6 championships with the Bulls, and I think it was 5 with the Lakers. 11 NBA championships. And he was a bench player. And so it's like he had the skill of how to bring people together, including Dennis Rodman, who nobody could manage except Phil Jackson could. Phil Jackson got the performance out of this, crazy guy, Dennis Rodman. And so the person that's great at sales, leading people is a totally different skill set.
Yep.
I'm a hybrid because I can sell and I can teach sales. It's just because my natural gifting is teaching, but I'm actually not a great sales manager. And why I'm not is accountability is not my thing. Encouragement is my thing. So
encouragement, yeah.
I'm a great trainer, but I'm not a great sales manager. So if you're like, oh, Eric Lofholm, he's going to be my sales manager. And I come in and I suck, and you're like, what's going on? Like, you got all the books you wrote. Yeah, but that's not my gifting.
Right.
So it's when you're looking at a sales manager, can they recruit? Do they understand lead distribution? Can they motivate the salespeople, or do they have enough skill at certain things? Maybe they're not a great recruiter, but they're great at managing, and there's not a high turnover where you're at, so you don't need big solar. You got to recruit like crazy. So your manager better be a great recruiter.
Right.
But other industries you don't have high turnover. They don't need to be a great recruiter. So it's like, what skills does the team need, and hire for those skills. And your direct relationship with that manager is critical.
Yeah. As the entrepreneur, when you get that manager in place, it can be such a weight lifted off of you if you get this right. I mean, it is so beautiful when you get this. I remember when Dave came on board for us and took the sales function, and suddenly I didn't have it anymore. And they would just bring me in occasionally for group presentations or different things like that. It was so phenomenal. But what he had was, by the way, you have to notice that Phil Jackson was an NBA basketball player. He was pretty darn good at basketball, but he was not the star. And you have to know the craft. So the manager's got to know sales, but the more important thing is knowing people and knowing relationships and being able to bring people together and hold people accountable and put systems and processes in place. Those are different things than your top dog salesperson is going to like. That top salesperson is going to despise taking the time to lay out process and put systems in place and create rules in your CRM, and that's going to drive the person crazy. They just want to get on the phone and sell. So when you have someone who has decent sales skills, but really good people and organizational skills, and wants to elevate the whole team and create this energy, boy, that is a powerful sales leader that can take a huge weight off of the business owner. And what I found is, to get to 3 million, you generally are going to need a sales leader that can do that work. Okay, so let's talk about beyond this, and in the last step here, because to a certain extent, once you get past one sales team and you get to 3 million, now to go to 10 million, to 30 million, to 100 million, it tends to be just more stacking and specializing. You've got more specialists. You got this team that focuses on enterprise, and this team that focuses on small business, or maybe it's this team that focuses on the West region and this team that focuses on the East region. There's lots of different ways to divide it up, but essentially you just start to create more teams that have specialty in different areas. You can specialize them by your product or your services. You can specialize them geographically. Lots of different ways to specialize. But there are some new things that the business owner and the sales leaders have to start to do when you have multiple sales teams. So what would you, and this is important for people that want to get to 10 million, 30 million, 100 million as you have multiple sales teams. What's your experience there, especially as a sales trainer? Because let's face it, this is where a lot of your craft really comes into play. But what's your experience there on what people do well or where people make mistakes as they're trying to scale up multiple sales teams?
I'm gonna answer your question differently than how you asked it.
Sure, go for it.
And so I don't think I can add a lot of value on that particular question, but I do want to talk about scaling and growing a business. And one of the great ways to do it is with strategic alliances. So I want to share a quick story of one of my clients who had a heating and air conditioning business, and he wanted to grow it. And so he decided to go to Home Depot and he said, "Hey, who does your heating and air conditioning installs?" And they go, "Well, we have local installers that do that." And he goes, "Great, I'm a local installer. How do I get on the list?" And they're like, "You got to fill out the form." So he goes, "Great." He fills out the form and they literally added him to the list, and he did $250,000 in business from Home Depot referrals in year one. So
wow.
In looking to go to 2 million to 10 million or 10 million to 100 million, it's like, what can infuse us with leads, a strategic alliance, marketing. Tony Robbins did it with the infomercial. The thing that made Tony Robbins world famous was that infomercial, was marketing. So looking at different strategies that can infuse you with leads, maybe it's going international, maybe it's a product line extension, like what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone. So I don't have a lot of experience with the question that you asked, but as far as growth, I would look for how can we bring in a lot more leads through strategic alliance marketing, paid ads, etc.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, that's what I've seen is when you get to 10 and you want to go to 30 or 100, having gone through that, what you end up doing is it is through partnerships and strategic alliances frequently, because you can only buy so many leads, you can only do so much advertising or getting out there and educating. You've got to start building those partnerships. And the one you mentioned with Home Depot is a great example. A lot of times what happens though is as you get bigger and bigger as a company, you can command relationships and partnerships with organizations that you just couldn't do when you were smaller. You just weren't ready for it. And so I think one of the things that savvy entrepreneurs do as they're going through the going to 10 and then to 30 and then to 100 is they're building out multiple sales teams, but they're doing it through partnerships, channels, opening up the market for them. And, they're finding new segments of the market. And that's a way that they specialize their teams. I'll see companies that will have a sales team that's specialized just on, one major partner account. You could imagine that Home Depot could turn into a massive arm of business for a large HVAC organization, and you'd have to have the trucks and the teams and all of that to support it. Home Depot is not going to send you that flow if you're not going to be able to handle it well. When you get to a certain level, you can start to take on that, and then you have a team that's actually dedicated to that whole channel. And it's not just as simple as, oh, well, you're on the list. Like, you have to go work the channel. You got to go work the decision makers and the program generators, and so it becomes a new kind of partnership sales. In general, what I find is that when you're building multiple sales teams, especially when we went through this to grow to 100 million, it wasn't enough to just segment geographically, because the point you're making is you got to open up the market further. You got to tap into the market beyond the lead sources that you have. And there's usually a different motion of going to the market that's required, whether that's through partners or whether that's sometimes embedded in your products, or maybe it's a service adjacency. There's different ways that you can do that. So, well, to me, going through the stages of growth and making the adjustments that are necessary in sales is one of the most fun things in business. And it's also kind of tricky because it's true that what got you here won't get you there to the next stage. It's also true that sometimes if you are applying later stage thinking in your earlier stage, it actually works totally against you. So it's not just what gets you here doesn't get there, but what can get you there actually won't work over in this current stage. It works the opposite. You don't want to go out and be doing these major partnerships when you haven't figured out how to sell even at the very beginning. It just doesn't work, and those partners are going to look at you and be like, really? So that doesn't work well. So anyway, I appreciate your experience. I know you've done a lot of sales training. Where can people learn more about you if they want to shorten their learning curve, get through the sales quicker, and improve the growth of their business through sales?
Yeah, easiest thing to do, go to saleschampion.com. And when you get there, hit the Start Here button. Start Here will take you to a course called Bronze Protege, which is my free course, and it comes with an AI sales coach. So I created my own custom Eric Lofholm Chat GPT. I loaded up all my content. So somebody can come in and have an experience with me through technology.
Love it.
Saleschampion.com, hit Start Here. Also, if you have a sales team and you'd like some additional support, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Just reach out on my website or find me on social media, and we could have a complimentary call and just discuss what are some of the challenges that you're facing and see if I have any solutions to help you.
Sounds great. Well, Eric, thank you so much for talking through this critical aspect of business, the nobility of sales, as I like to say, and helping people understand what's necessary, especially in those early stages, so that they can get through the stage changes and reach their sales goals. Appreciate you sharing your expertise, 27 years of wisdom and 20 years of our friendship and relationship. Thank you so much for being here. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us on this episode of Conquer the Chaos. Until next time, keep growing.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Subscribe right here on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss a single episode of the Conquer the Chaos podcast. And hey, if you like this episode, let's get this out to more entrepreneurs. We all know that it is not easy to grow a great business and a great life. And so let's get this message out to others. Make sure that you hit the like button, that you comment, and that you share it with others so that we can help other entrepreneurs build a great business and a great life as they conquer the chaos. Keep going, keep serving, and keep growing.